Everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Germello. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives and the work of the people in my network. So these are great leads to get to the books that have impacted them the most, made the strongest mark on them, left the best impression on them, has really resulted in how they've moved through life and or work and or business in a different way. And my guest today is Dr. Julie Donley. And Julie is a leadership expert, award-winning author, and former director of nursing with nearly 30 years of experience helping professionals navigate high-stress environments, manage conflict, and lead with emotional intelligence. With a background in behavioral health and organizational leadership, she guides leaders to shift from emotional reactivity to intentional leadership, building stronger teams and healthier workplaces. She holds a doctorate in organizational leadership, an MBA, and is a professional certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. Her latest book, Leading at the Speed of People, explores the power of self-awareness and emotional mastery in leadership. Through her coaching, speaking, and writing, Dr. Donley shares practical strategies to help leaders reduce stress, communicate more effectively, and lead with empathy, and clarity. Julie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, John, for having me. This is it's wonderful to be here today.
It's great to have you. So I always start off, Julie, who are you today? Obviously, I read the bio. It's amazing to see and hear about the work that you're doing in all the different spheres of writing, speaking, coaching. But who are you today? What does the work look like that you do with your clients? Just so we get a better sense of the day-to-day in your work and or life today with your clients to get a sense for who's speaking to us today.
Yeah. So I am a coach, and I work with leaders. I do speaking and engagements that share those same topics. And of course, I'm an author, and I focus on helping people to lead more effectively. And of course, that starts with leading yourself. And so my work really centers on self-awareness, emotional mastery, and communication, especially in high stress or high stakes environment, because that's what I grew up in, right? Behavioral health is a very high stakes and high stress environment. And so, I coach mid to senior level executives who want to feel more confident, reduce friction, and lead in a way that creates more connection, not conflict. And so it's incredibly rewarding for me to help someone shift how they show up and see how that changes everything around them. And so that's my mission, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Julia, why do you say you're excited about it?
Yeah, because, you work so hard for so many years. And my career's, over 30 years now. And I think a good bit of it is you start out just striving, right? Trying to learn where you fit in the world, and you keep,
it's amazing how that's an ongoing journey sometimes.
It is.
That, and I tell kids in college, graduate students or whatever, don't feel like you have to have it sorted out by a certain age. It's not a cookie cutter answer. It's not the answer, but if you can look at it as a journey where you're kind of evolving and moving in the right direction, that way you're not putting pressure on yourself. But it's amazing how it's just this constant evolution and journey of moving towards what we want, but that we're always changing.
Well, I have two responses to what you just said. One is I really wish someone had told me that when I was young.
Yeah.
Because when I was in my 20s, I had no clue and no guidance. And I really thought I was supposed to know. And it took me 8 years to get my first degree. And if people do the math, not that they would, but it really did take me a long time to get started, because my first degree was not nursing. I did something. My first degree was business, and then I went to nursing school, and then I sort of had things sorted out, or at least the next step sorted out. And I think you're right. So the second part to that answer is, what's being asked of me now at this point in my life is different because I'm different. Because I have had so many years of experience in behavioral health and in leadership and in coaching. I've been coaching for over 20 years. So all of that coming together I'm different. And what I have to offer today is much different than what I had to offer when I was 25, right? So I think you're right on so many levels. It's a journey. And what I strive to do today, I could not have done then. I didn't have the experience, the knowledge, the education. And I think I'm much clearer today as to who I am, what I can do, and what is being asked of me. And so, we're here to talk about books. And I think to myself, why write a book? It's such a big project. But I love it. I love writing books. I think that whatever I can do to help people to get the lessons that I have uncovered over the years through my education, through my research, and through just life experience, I want to get it out there. And coaching is great, but you're doing one person at a time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I asked, admit maybe that was a weird question to be like, wait, why are you excited? But when
Yeah,
somebody
no.
says they're excited about their work, especially somebody who has this decades-long career, I want to hear, okay, what is it about this point in time, this point in your career, this point in your story that has you excited? Like, it sounded a little different than like, yeah, I really do enjoy my work. Like you use that word excited. I want to know what the meaning is to it. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think it's about what I shared, but the other piece, and I think this is what we're all striving for, is I feel very at one with my life, right? So how my life is when you're starting out, like you have to figure everything out, the money, where you live, what kind of car, just everything. What do you like? How do you like to be, dress, whatever. But at this point in my life, I know all of that. At some point you're like, you know yourself really well. And there's a level of confidence. I know what I know and what I can deliver. And I think there's something that is really great when you graduate from not being good enough or not sure, not thinking that you're good. Am I doing this life thing right? To, yeah, I got this.
Yeah.
And when you get there, that's I'm not saying I got it all nailed down, but I still have a lot of questions, but I don't have that question anymore.
Yeah. When you get to that tipping point where you feel more comfortable and confident in who you are, that's kind of like, I think that's kind of like the way that I just viewed what you were saying.
Yeah.
As you were describing it, it's kind of just like a balance where you're not overly confident. You still have to learn. There's still a journey in front of you, but there is something about getting to that point where you feel balance, you feel peace, you feel freedom because those major chunks of concern are taken care of. That stuff is allayed. So you get a little more of your peace of mind back because you're not concerned about those big pieces anymore. And it gives you a little more freedom to design what you want moving forward.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Well, and again, the more you know yourself, the more you're sort of out of the way and you can just focus on serving others. And that's just a great space.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think when you're younger, on the younger side, and hell, that can mean 40 and under. It's not even, I know adults that are still uncertain. I'm still uncertain about where I want to land. It's incredible how it keeps evolving year to year. But yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is going to happen. I think it's just a game of exploration and experimentation. Julie, so your coaching, is it just strictly one-on-one? Do you ever do group coaching or any offerings to that effect,
yes.
to that side of things?
Yes, I do group coaching. I mean, I'm certified in group coaching and in team coaching, which is different. But mostly I do groups and individuals. Okay. And I love groups because they learn from one another. And if I'm coaching you, then somebody else is in the audience, they're listening, it helps them too, because they're seeing, somebody else, and you really do understand that you're not alone. So I love working with groups. I am starting a new group coaching program in the fall. So people can look for that if that interests them.
What is I know the general idea of your work, but is there a specific theme to that one or a name to that one, what it
It's
covers?
leadership coaching. So
Okay.
it's,
Okay.
I've done, I've been coaching for a long time, so I've kind of done it all. And honestly, you can title it whatever you want. It's all life coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
like that. Say more on that. I like that because I
I mean,
think it is life coaching because there is no definitive demarcation between who you are in your life and your leadership. So please speak more to that.
Well, I will, because there is a distinction. Someone who calls themselves a life coach focuses more on life topics.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is fine. And they may not be skilled in leadership.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I am skilled. I mean, I'm a leadership expert. I have studied it. I have read all the books and tons of stuff. So I'm quite qualified. And so from that perspective, if you're a leader and you want to learn how to lead more effectively, I'm a better choice than a life coach, right? And you're going to be learning about life as well, because who you are in leadership is who you are in other areas of you're still in a family, you're leading there, you have kids or nieces and nephews or family members that look up to you. So I really come from that perspective of you're the leader in your own life. So even if you're not in a titled position, you still can lead from wherever you are.
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, that's what, now career coaching, there are there's relationship coaching, there's career coaching. And like I said, I've touched on all of this stuff over the years. You do it long enough. And a lot of times the coaching winds up career coaching because the person decides they want to move up or they want to move somewhere else. They want something else. But, and that's fine. But I obviously, if they wanted to go through a whole career coaching process and get to assessments and stuff, I would not be the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Julie, when it comes to you to understand how you got here doing this work, can you lead me through where it started off, even going back as far as school and kind of going through the highlights, the steps to now? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, my first degree was in business. I really had no clue what I was going to do with my life. And I decided that I almost failed out of school. I failed a course, and it was a high level accounting course. And I'm like, I'm not going to be an accountant. Why am I doing this? So I actually had to change gears, and I finished with a degree in business. I studied business law, but at that point, I knew that I wanted to be a nurse. Actually, what I knew is I wanted to go into psych, and the options were nursing, social work, or, a psychologist or something. And I thought, no, nursing, it's very flexible. Best decision I ever made. And so I did, during nursing school, I took a job at a psychiatric hospital, and I started working on an adolescent unit with, 30 to 40 teenagers all battling addiction, trauma, psychiatric challenges. And I loved it. I loved it. I mean, I was in my 20s, and I loved the work. I loved the kids. But so I knew I was in the right place. However, the boss, the administrator, she was not a nurse. She was a unit administrator. She created a toxic and very challenging work environment.
Nurse Ratchet.
Yeah, well, she wasn't a nurse, and I think that was part of the problem. She had some insecurities. She loved her power. She played favorite. She barked orders at people. She wasn't a doctor. I mean, she had I think she had a bachelor's in business, which is what I had. But she, so it created this very hostile, negative work. People were very scared of her. Now, remember where we were working. This is a psych ward. So we were scared anyway, all the time, because we never knew what the patients were.
You guys already had enough stress.
Exactly. It's a very dangerous work environment. And so we didn't need her. And so here I am, this young person learning, and I'm looking at her going, isn't anybody leading her? Like, this just seems wrong. Don't they see the revolving door? And I think that could have been blamed. A lot of people didn't want to work with teenagers. It's a very tough population to work with, and you have to deal with the families, that's a whole nother story. But it was so obvious to me, and that really lit a fire in me. I just believed that there was a better way to lead. So in addition to, I mean, I was becoming a nurse. I just wanted to be a great nurse. I wanted to learn how to be a good leader too. And so that lit a fire in me to study, to learn more, and to really come to understand what does it take for a leader to create an environment that is healthy, where people can thrive at work, not be fearful at work, where they look forward to coming to work, not dread seeing the boss. I mean, I tried to remain invisible, and that's no way to be. You want someone to come
Yeah.
to work and shine. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I fell into coaching I got laid off 3 times, not from her, but I did leave that job eventually, was able to go somewhere else. It was a very different work experience where we worked together much more succinctly. And so that was a different experience, very different experience. I did fall into coaching in 2001, I started coaching after a third layoff. And
How did that come to be? How did you cross paths with?
yeah,
I know you had that kind of curiosity from that bad boss, but what was it in that moment that maybe drew you towards coaching?
Yeah, well, okay. So I was laid off 3 times. I was a single parent at the time. So it was a scary time in my life. And I had just when I had my son, when I had my son, I got very, very deathly ill, and I almost died twice during the first year of his life. And so for me, it was a fight to live. And here I was trying to maintain a job, and I wound up getting laid off 3 times. And so after the third layoff, I had been with that company 2 years. I had finished my degree. I was sort of on the healthier, at that point. And I was doing the work. Like, this is crazy. I'm laid off 3 times. That's not and I have my new MBA, and I still got laid off. And so I just did some soul searching. I had been in, I loved personal development, wanting to understand myself and just how I ticked and, what's this life thing? And honestly, I had a front row seat to my life. I didn't have a front row seat to anybody else's life. So I just tried to explore myself, and I had always kept like a journal. But anyway, I was reading an article. I couldn't tell you what it was. And the woman in her bio at the end, it said, contact me for a free consultation. So I did. And I hired her as a coach. And after like 2 or 3 sessions, I mean, right away, I'm like, wait a second. I already did all this work for myself. I knew how to do it. And I said, how are you getting paid? Like, did you set up this business of yours? I mean, I did have an MBA, right? And so I dove in with both. I got educated in coaching, got involved in the profession, and got on the board of the local International Coaching Federation chapter here locally. And I had a coach. So that's what they tell you to do. Get involved, get a coach if you don't have one. And a lot of people miss that step, which always bothers me. If you meet coaches and they've never had their own coach where they've hired them and paid out of pocket, not just a peer coach, because we do a lot of peer coaching. That's great too. But there's a difference. So that's how I got started. And the other piece to that is before I became a coach in 99, I had written an article on the spur of the moment. I got upset about just because I was a recruiter at the time and just how people come in and what they expect. And so I wrote this article called Tips for Job Seekers. And I sent it in to the magazine, and it was like, they put it as a cover story. And I'm like, oh, so maybe I should write more. And that's when I started writing back. So I've been writing for publications since 1999. And of course, my first book came out in 2005, which I know we'll talk about. So, yeah.
Julie, for you, that indecision, now, was it 8 years of schooling with your MBA or before your MBA?
Oh, I had the 8 years it took me 8 years to get that first degree. I was working full time. I was out of house at that point, so, and then I went to nursing school, and I was able to get my associates in 2 years. And then I went on to get my bachelor's. Thank God, because I could not have been even though I had the master's right after that. After I got sick, I took some time off, and then I went back for my master's. And I started. I know that you didn't ask this, but I started coaching in 2001. I coached for over a decade, and then things happen, right, in life. I had written 2 books at that point. I had done a lot of speaking and obviously a lot of coaching, but the world changed. The market had crashed. Things changed. I got married again and decided maybe I should go back to full-time employment. And I'm telling you, I made that decision. And within 2 weeks, I had somebody landed this email. I think it was through LinkedIn. And she's like, hey, do you know anybody who would be interested in? And I'm like, I would be interested in that. And so I wound up back in full-time employment in 2012, working as a director of nursing for a large behavioral health center. I hadn't given up nursing. I had been
Okay.
nursing, but just like a part-time, just pop in, do a shift here and there. I loved it. I loved the work. I loved at that point, I had been doing it for so long, I had worked with all populations of psychiatric units. And so then during the time that I served as a director of nursing, those were the years that I got my doctorate in leadership.
Okay.
And
And then after that,
what's And after that, I returned to full-time coaching. I've been full-time coaching now for 5 years. And no, COVID had nothing to do with it. It was just I finished my doctorate and I was leaving, but COVID hit. So I actually stayed longer to make sure everything was in order for them before I left. And once I felt comfortable, then I resumed my coaching and all of this wonderful stuff that I'm doing now.
so does it make sense for you, Julie, from your childhood that this is what you're doing? How do you tie in who you are today to who you were as a kid? I'm always fascinated by seeing it in my clients when they get to their most fulfilled point. It's that somehow they've reached back to who they were all along because we give up so much of who we are for job descriptions, kind of sacrificing who we are for that. So for you, how do you tie the two together? How do you speak to that reconciliation between who you were as a kid and the work you're doing now?
It's so funny. It's a great question. I love it. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. But when I think about who I was as a kid, I was always very introspective. I was always a deep thinker. I remember this one girl saying to me once, you think too much. you know? And so we were like in middle school or, junior high or whatever when she said that. And I'm like, yeah, but is that a bad thing? It's not a bad thing. So, and I'm an observer. I always wanted to understand people. I wanted to understand how I tick, how I tick and how other people tick and why they did what they did. And so, I got off track because, stepping into adulthood was not easy for me. It's sort of just my personal life. My parents separated a lot of things happened to me at the age of 15, turning 16. And the worst possible time, I was like by myself. So it's like, oh, okay, here you go out in the world and figure it out. Like what? Even at 18, we're not ready, we're not ready. And so I was, thrown into it. And I think that's why I really had no guidance and no.
Well, that's what I was going to ask was because you said it took you so long because, you couldn't sort things out. I was wondering what your home life might have been like, what kind of models you may have had or not had, or what was it that, or I didn't know if maybe you were overly curious so you couldn't pick because you were curious about everything. So I was curious as to when going into school, what was it that kind of led you to not know what you wanted to do or have an idea, which is fine. Believe me, I was the same way.
Yeah. I just had a really rough time. I was pretty much had to parent myself from about age 12, just from circumstances at home. My parents obviously weren't happy together, but we didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then when he announced he was leaving at 15, I look at my life back today. You're talking 40, 50, almost, 40 years ago. It was it's so obvious now, but, and there'll be a book coming at some point about that, but, but I can't write it yet. Not yet. I was really by myself. And I don't know that many 15, 16, 17-year-olds really have all the answers that they need to be able to pursue life in the world. And so I really did get off track. I fell into drugs and I had a great time. I had a
Yeah, yeah,
great
yeah.
time for several years, but I really how do you go to college? I didn't, we didn't have the internet. I had no idea. And because I changed schools a couple times, my parents had this lovely idea to change schools. I didn't know anybody. So I didn't know what's a guidance counselor. I did not have any idea. And so I didn't have any adults guiding me. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I don't work with teenagers today, but I was very drawn throughout my career, even as a director of nursing. It was kids or addicts. That's who I wanted to work with. And I wound up working with children as a director of nursing because I wanted to influence that. No teenagers has to be alone. And they don't necessarily know where to go. Now they have the internet today, but that could be like not a good thing either.
Yeah, yeah. And it's
So
incredible how many people I've spoken to. The good work they're doing today is driven by what they didn't have when they were younger. And
yeah,
they don't realize it until they're a couple years into the work. They're just driven to it. They're pulled to it, to
mhm,
working with certain constituencies, groups, whatever the work might do. And a lot of it stems from the traumas that they had as a kid or the inexperiences or lack of experiences that they had as a
yeah.
kid. So it's incredible how it comes full circle and you can impact so many people based on what we experience or didn't experience as when we were kids.
Well, I think one of the things that happened for me is I was not okay. I didn't think I was okay. I
Hmm.
didn't, because the messages I got growing up was you're not good enough. I
Yeah.
am,
Yeah.
the message was that nothing we did was good enough because it wasn't the way my father expected us to behave or wanted us to be. You know what I mean? So if we did something and it wasn't the way he would do it, then it was wrong. Well, I'm not going to do things the way you want
Yeah.
me to do them because I'm not you. You are you,
Mhm.
and you can be the best you can be. Doesn't make you right, wrong, good, or bad. No judgment there. But I can't be you. I have to be me. And that was one of the lessons that I learned in my early 20s, like when I started to come around. And that was one of the big lessons is that I have to live my life according to my own, I don't want to say rules, but rules. I have to figure out what those are for
Yeah.
me. What
Yeah.
makes it, what's right, good, and what's bad for me. And it's kind of like we tell people, you do you. Well, I had to figure out that it was okay to be me. And that is huge. And I feel like I'm not the only one. But when I wrote my first book, The Journey Called You, that was one of the things I talked about. It's like I really thought everybody had the answers. And I was just the one missing. I missed it because I didn't have parents. I didn't have, even a mother to I had a mother, but she wasn't emotionally available. She was what is known as emotionally absent. And
Hmm.
so we just did her thing. She just wasn't really somebody that you could talk to about things. And so I was
Yeah.
just on my own. And yeah, so that was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn. And I don't know how. I figured stuff out along the way. I think God, I call him God and I refer to him as a him, but that's just me. I think there were angels and things that helped me along the way. That's why I didn't die in the things I did when I was doing drugs. I mean, I put myself in some really bad places. Um, but it
Only
wasn't
were
then.
you an only child?
No, I did have a sister, but she was dealing with her own stuff.
Okay.
So, we tried to be there for each other, but we were really pretty lost individuals. And we're close today. But back then, she was doing her thing and I was doing mine. So, in fact, my dad moved out. I think she moved out a few weeks later. So she had to figure the same thing. It
Okay.
was the same
Yeah.
outcome in a very bad environment. And we share that today. But we both made it good. She has her own business. I have mine. And so we're both happily married. And so, we figured it out. But But your original question was, how do you reconcile? I think everything that I went through, even the drug use and the, just like got a little off the deep end there, but everything helped shape who I am today and what I believe in and how I show up in the world. And so I wouldn't change anything. Some people say, oh, would you want to go back and be 8? No, I would like my youth only physically. Like I wish the body worked the same. The knees weren't bad and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
no, I think one of the things that I wanted when I was young, I just wanted to be wise. And that's the only thing I can think of is I wanted to be knowledgeable, but more than just know stuff, I wanted to be wise. How do you use that knowledge for the good of of the world? And that's what I'm doing today. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm still learning, and I just want to help other people to feel good about themselves. That's my personal mission. How do you feel good about yourself and do great things that you're meant to do in the world without apology? Like be great. Shine your light as brilliant as you can because it helps us if you do. And so in that respect, I do tie who I am today back to when I was growing up.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible how at that point when you're young, it impacts one person, but then the work that you go on to do is ripple effects of people and people and people. And how you said, obviously you wouldn't want to experience again, all of that again, but that it serves a purpose to make you who you are today. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
And then, Julie, what do you consider your superpower?
Yeah, I think given everything I've shared, this won't surprise you. My superpower is making sense of things, right? So I'm well read, like I read lots of things and I bring a lot of things in and I take that complexity and simplify it so people can see clearly and move forward with confidence and knowledge and information that's very practical. In the chaos that we live in of leadership and emotion and life, I help people find clarity. And I think that's the gift. So it's kind of like giving someone a map when they've been walking around in circles. And that clarity, when you're clear, it calms things down. You're like, oh, okay, great. I can move forward that way. And from there, they can lead or take action with more intention. And for me, it's empathy, empathizing with our fellow human and create a bigger impact. So what this means or translates to for me is teaching leaders new ways to think about a situation. So reframing challenges as opportunities or expanding their sense of what's possible, just reframing things. So when leaders or when the people I talk to shift their perspective, like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah. And then it opens up a whole new way of seeing things. Then they begin to lead themselves differently. And that's when everything around them starts to change as well. So that, I think, that's my gift.
A tangential question, but how did your leadership coaching evolve? I don't think I've really asked this question. I think most people from when they started leadership coaching to now, their focus may not be the same, that particular area that they're focused in on, that they specialize in. So for you, if there were kind of pivot points within leadership coaching, what did that look like where your focus was drawn to different areas to where you focus now?
Yeah. Well,
if at all.
Yeah, that's a good question. When I started coaching in 2001, I didn't know. We didn't even know what coaching was. It was so new. I had to tell people what I did. I wasn't focused necessarily on leadership coaching, and I had all kinds of clients. I had entrepreneurs and a lot of healthcare professionals because I was in healthcare. I was still nursing at that time. I mean, I'm retired from nursing now. I don't do that anymore. But back then I did. And so I had all kinds of clients. When I returned to full-time coaching in 2020, the end of 2020, I only work with leaders. I mean, that's my thing. And so, but you have to realize since the early 2000s, I've had, I completed my doctorate and I went on to, read tons more books and study leadership and serve as a director of nursing for almost a decade. And so I have a lot more experience and knowledge in leadership. So to me, I'm very clear about what a leader needs to do. When I know we're going to talk about the book, but when I wrote my first book and even creating the course, I created a course of the same name, Leading at the Speed of People. It is completely people-centered. So there are things in leadership that you need to know. You need to know budgeting. You need to know strategy. I don't teach those things. I teach strategic thinking, but it's about the people. It's about how you as an individual, as a human being, how do you treat yourself? How do you treat others to get work done? And so I'm very clear today that it is people-centered. It is people first. It is people focused. And so a lot of the work is empathy. As I mentioned, mindset, a lot of mindset shifting and perspective. And how the brain works so that we can open ourselves up and give ourselves a break too, because we think a certain way. It doesn't make us right, wrong, good, or bad. It's just if you think a certain way, we have to remember that there could be other ways to think that could be effective, and so that the loosening of the attachment, we get very, very attached to the way we think, and then we assume that that's right. Again, assume that that's right. And it may be right. There's no judgment from me. It may be right for you, but that doesn't mean that thinking would be right for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, I think that answers your question. For me, I'm just very clear about what good leadership looks like. And the other thing I'm clear about is that no matter how you step into leadership, there will be gaps in what you have learned. Because even if you went to school and you studied leadership in organizations, and then you step into an organization and you start to lead, guess what? It is a new context for you. And maybe they don't onboard. I've had that experience. When I became a director of nursing, I got handed a set of keys and said, here you go, have at it. I have never worked here before. I don't know your system. I don't know the people. I didn't even have address. I had to ask. I have 3 sites. Can you give me the addresses to the other 2 sites? And maybe a key that would get me in. I mean, really?
Yeah.
So we're still going to have to learn. And that's where I feel like it lowers our confidence when we're unsure. And so if I can help you learn how to fill in all your gaps so that you feel confident, even if you don't know something, then at least you're confidently unknowing, but you know that you don't know. So you can go figure it out or learn it or whatever, So.
Yeah. And that last piece makes so much sense. The not knowing, but that you're confident you don't know it. So you can go, instead of trying to hide that you don't know it, you just say, okay, I don't know it. I'm a blank slate. Teach me, or where the resources to find the resources that I could learn. So I completely get that.
Okay.
Julie, we've talked about different components to leadership, brought up particular words, particular mindsets, but directly, what does leadership mean to you? If you could capture it in a definition, what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah. To me, it's how you show up. It's less about your title, because that's just a position, but it's more about your influence, how you impact others, how you handle stress, how you create safety, how you lead through uncertainty. We saw a lot of that through COVID, didn't we? How some leaders really stepped up and communicated well. They didn't know anything, but they communicated well. And others just hid because they didn't know what to do. Leadership begins with self-leadership. We have to lead ourselves, knowing ourselves, managing ourselves, using that clarity to guide and inspire others. And it's more than something you do, it's who you are. So when leaders develop that self-leadership, they build trust. They reduce friction, which I bring up in my book about what friction is. They reduce all that. So they reduce stress and they create environments where people feel valued and they can really step up. That's when performance and engagement and even relationships and community really flourish. And you create a really great workplace.
Julie, can you speak to self-leadership? Only because I've heard you mention it, and I don't know, it may seem obvious or not obvious to the listeners, to the viewers, when it comes to leadership, what self-leadership means. You don't hear that too often, but I like when people say you got to lead yourself first. Like the work starts with
Mhm.
yourself. I've been in situations like that with prospective clients where they're like, I don't want to work on myself. Literally, this is what they've said. Just tell me what I need to say to get them to follow me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you, having started right around the time where coaching was really picking up, where did self-leadership, that understanding that somebody has to lead and figure themselves out or work on themselves first before they can be the leader to others, how did
Mhm.
that work into and factor itself into your work?
I think it's always been there because of how I've always, I mean, right? I have to be okay with me to lead others. Um, Leadership isn't about telling people what to do.
Yeah.
It's not. And that is a misunderstanding. And because then there wouldn't be self-leadership. We wouldn't be I think your question is, what is self-leadership? So self-leadership is the ability to be self-aware, which we're not as aware. People will say, oh yeah, I'm very self-aware, but they're really
Yeah.
not. There's
Yeah.
components of self-awareness. And Tasha Urick did work on her book. In her book, she introduces that. It's called Insight, and she does a tremendous job of her research on self-awareness, which had to be a hard thing to to research, right? But so it includes self-awareness and self-management. And you cannot manage yourself if you're not aware. But let me give you an example because I think it'll be easier to, especially with the comment that you made about the person who comes to you and says, I just want to change everybody else, right? They don't want to change themselves. I had a client, very high level leader. She was a senior VP, and she came to me in part because very good at what she did, very well respected, but she was getting feedback that she was intimidating because she wanted people to get stuff done a certain way and they weren't doing it. So there was a lot of frustration, and her frustration would spill out in a way that came across as intimidating. People were scared of her. And so that became the problem rather than the focus on the project and getting the work done. So, but through the work, we were able to help her to identify what was actually frustrating to her. And that was that they weren't doing it. Well, why weren't they doing it? Because in her mind, we talked about this, right? In her mind, she assumed that they knew what she knew, which was she had the vision for the end goal. She had all this other information and knowledge. I mean, she was the one in part who put all this together. The people that she was leading, they had no information. When people are behaving a certain way, that behavior speaks volumes. It's telling you something. And so she had to first gain control of herself. She had to lead herself. She had to understand who she was, where she was, and what she expected. But then she had to use empathy to get curious with them. Where are they? What do they know? What might be missing? What are the gaps in understanding or knowledge? Or maybe they just they don't have enough instruction to be able to perform. Once she made those two shifts, understanding herself and her frustration was a signal that there was a mismatch. Instead of getting upset about it, she could then choose to ask questions. Well, that helped her to align with people. And once she met them, once she understood where they were, then she could teach them what they needed to know to move them along and get them working differently. And they were no longer scared of her. And they were producing better work. And she could then say, hey, great job, which makes people feel, again, when you show appreciation, which I do talk about appreciation in my book, Leading at the Speed of People, the importance of it, telling people what's good, how they're doing things
Mm.
well. because it offers positive reinforcement. Hey, I'm doing
Yeah.
good. Oh, I sit up a little higher. I feel better about myself. I want to work harder. I want to work harder for you because maybe you'll throw me a bone later.
Yeah.
So, when you shift, that's self-leadership. It starts with you because you're not going to just yell at people for not getting it done. We've all seen that happen. We may have even experienced that, but it's not going to get them to move any differently because they don't know. If they
Yeah.
knew, they would do. So, yeah.
Julie, now jumping into the book, and before we jump into the book, can you just kind of run down all your other books, and
Sure.
just kind of give a quick insight into each, what made you write that particular book, just so we can understand, your book journey and everything else that you've written?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. So the Journey Called You, A Roadmap to Self-Discovery and Acceptance was my first book. And it really was about, you know, becoming an adult, I guess, and just feeling good about who you are and how to do that. Because you could say to someone, to do that they should feel good about themselves. But how do you do that? And so that's the journey, is how do you learn to know yourself and accept yourself without judgment, and then learn to make choices that honor you, that respect you and who you want to be. So that's all that book. And that's timeless, right? I just revisited it. We just updated the cover and some of the just interior stuff. And because I had to reread the book, I'm like, oh, this was so good. So I think it can really help people who are feeling perhaps not as confident. The second book is called Does Change Have to Be So Hard?
Oh,
8
wow.
mindset strategies to overcome self-sabotage and take control of your life. Now, this book is interesting journey. This book is both neuroscience, because HARD, H-A-R-D, is an acronym for why change is hard. And yes, the answer is yes, change is hard. It's always hard. It's always going to be hard. And the one certainty in life is change. We will have change. So I love this
Yeah.
book. I had to revisit it. We had to update it and actually create a new book out of it to get it to work. And so I'm going to be relaunching this book. I wrote this book in 2011 and I went back to work full time in 2012. So I never actually sort of shared it with the world. It was out there, but nobody knew about it. This book is, so I start the book with why change is hard, and I introduce habits, attachments, which we talked about just a minute ago, resistance, which is fear, and then discouragement, which is time, right? We want it to happen like this. And then I shift topics, and the rest of the book is all about the 8 strategies for how to get ourselves through change and just making it easier.
And I mean, if there were ever a point in time in life, in a period of time like now, that were the right time to put out a book like that or reissue a book like that, I mean, it's now, just because everything is just so much more. Just to think about how things were paced in 2011 versus now, everything is just so exponential.
Yeah. And so I love this book, and and this book, again, very people focused. It is not an organizational change book. But if you're going through an organizational change and you have not read this book, you are going to have a problem, because this book helps you to understand what you're going to go through. It's the feelings. It talks about all the stuff that's going to go through your head, the muckiness of change. And I introduce you to all that. It's not going to be foreign to you. You're going to go, oh yeah, I've experienced that. Yes. So, but again, we're the self-study course. We're the self-study course for what it means to be human. When you understand what you go through and how to make it easier for you to make changes in your life, then you go to work and you have to implement this big organizational change. Then you're going to see what happens with other people, and they're going to experience different extremes of each of those, hard, whether it's fear or discouragement, but you're going to be able to address it and use those strategies. I will tell you, and again, I had to reread the book and go through the book, had to update it a little bit. And just because, I mean, even in one section, I talked about a rewinder and like a tape rewinder. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't need that anymore. So I created different,
I miss those. Okay.
yeah. So, but I realized just how much I used that book as a leader when I was director of nursing. We were constantly implementing new programs, and people would get scared or they would resist. They were like, "No way, I don't. That's not good." And I had to learn how to navigate people to get them to influence them to make those changes. And so it really is a helpful book. This latest book is called Leading at the Speed of People: Strategies for Success in a Fast-Paced World. And as I mentioned, I created a course, a comprehensive course, as well in the same topic to to help people to learn those leadership skills. And this book is really built around that core truth that you can't effectively lead others if you're not first leading yourself. So every challenge, every interaction that you have, every relationship is all part of your life curriculum. As I mentioned, you're the self-study course. And so part one is leading yourself, exploring self-awareness and mindset and how you got started as a leader and reconnecting with your purpose. And I tell my story about that first leader that I had. Well, I wouldn't even call her a leader. She was a boss, right? And that I had to deal with. Emotional intelligence and just managing your internal reactions. Then in part two, I talk about reducing friction, because so much of what makes leadership hard isn't the work, it's the people and navigating those misunderstandings, assumptions, reactivity, unmet expectations. All of these create tension. And so this section focuses on how to handle conflict, how to set clear expectations, and how to give and receive feedback. I go through that in the book, and reduce the stress, because friction is anything that gets in the way of people doing just doing their job. I compare it in the book to the curling, that sport curling where they push the stone down and somebody comes along and they're
like
brush
polishing
the ice
or
to try to
roughening. Yeah.
That's the leader's job. Your job. You're not the stone. You're the brush. You're moving. So
That's a
part
great
of the
metaphor.
work. Yeah, part of the work in part two is to look at how you might be contributing to friction. Because if you're not clear in your expectations, if you don't have a clear vision, if you don't have, and I talk about these things, so you can start to look at where you might be impacting the environment negatively or not as effectively as you'd like to be. And then in part three, I introduced the CARE leadership model. I like my acronyms. I'm a nurse, So CARE stands for, is an acronym, and it stands for communication. What should we be communicating as leaders? And I go through that. I mentioned appreciation. Then it's respect. So I spend a whole chapter on respect, and then empathy. And these are core behaviors that create people-centered, high-performing environments. And I break each one down into stories. I give a lot of practical strategies and reflection questions so that readers can apply the lessons right away. What's unique about this book, because, it's another leadership book, right? But it blends psychology, leadership theory, and real life stories from my clients and my years in behavioral health. So, and from coaching leaders. So it's both thoughtful and it's actionable. And as I mentioned, I created a comprehensive self-paced leadership course based on the book. It includes some other things as well, so leaders can take the concepts even further and apply them to their real-world situations at their own pace, of course. And so, I'm really working to help people to further this mission of being very people-centered, starting with ourselves, being kinder to ourselves, being more understanding, and by using that to help us be more understanding and compassionate for others as well.
Julie, for you, what was the trigger for writing this book? What was it you saw? What was the impetus? What was the foundation that kind of called to you saying, it's time to put this out there?
Yeah, I wrote about the CARE leadership model back in, I want to say 2007. So I was writing as I mentioned, I began writing for publication. I had several columns and wrote numerous, hundreds of articles for different magazines and stuff. Magazines, and then we moved online. And I developed the Care Leadership. I'm like, oh, this is a book, but I wasn't ready to write the book. And then, of course, I went back to work and I got my doctorate, and then I returned to leadership coaching. And I think when I returned, I knew that there would be a book on the Care Leadership model. And it wasn't until, it took me a couple of years getting back into this world of coaching that I was able to decide, you know what, it's time to pull this all together. And, the Care Leadership model is the central focus of the book. But it's not the only focus, because if we have to start with ourselves first. It's very hard to be empathetic if you're too wrapped up in your needs.
Yeah.
If you, need to be seen, need to be recognized, then everything that you do is going to be through that lens. And that's not going to get you the results you want. So so I'm really proud of how it turned out to include these important elements. And with the focus of reducing stress throughout. It's sort of woven throughout. I was talking with a client this morning, and she's so stressed out. She's lost herself in the work. She just works. And so that was part of the conversation today is, talk about she is leading herself, but she's leading herself into burnout.
Yeah.
Because it's not sustainable. We can all do that. We can work extra hours for a period of time. But if that's your mode of operating all the time, it's not going to work. And so that was sort of part of and I find that happening with a lot of people today. And I think part of it is societal. But guess what? We're part of society. And if we want something different, then we have to make the change in ourselves. There you go. There's that self-leadership again. Yeah. We can't expect other people to do it if we're not role modeling it. We have to role model. What does it look like to have well-being and work hard? And I'm not sure we have those answers yet, but we can work towards it. I know the newer generations are not looking to their parents and saying, "Oh, I want to work 12-hour days."
Yeah. But that's such a great point that you can set the tone, you could set the cadence, you can define the structure or the paradigm for what great leadership can look like. Yes. That it doesn't have to be cookie cutter based on what you saw before you. I think in the end, people want to get the work done, but the way that you lead can be your own. You can own it. I think a lot of people don't think that they can create a new paradigm, create a new voice of leadership. They kind of just have to maybe parrot what they've seen before, but they don't recognize that freedom, and you can set what that looks like. Obviously, you need the going concern. The business has to be there the next day. You have to deliver results. But how you get there, you can kind of experiment with how you're leading your people.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, through my research over the last, 10, 12 years, there's a lot of work. The way we are working isn't working. That's a book by, and his name escapes me. The gentleman, Tony Schwartz, wrote Full Engagement. We are killing ourselves at work. So Dying for a Paycheck is from Jeffrey Pfeiffer. We are literally, the way we in this country, in the United States, now other countries don't work like we work. They don't force us to work 14-hour days. They don't do that. They take long lunches. They're very social. But we have to change. This is not sustainable. The levels of stress, I will share that, I'm a nurse. So what is the number one cause of death in America? Heart disease, right? What are the reasons for heart disease? And when you dig deep enough, it's obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, right? But what causes those? You dig deep enough, it's stress.
Yeah.
We're stressed, so we eat. We're stressed, so our blood pressure rises. We get high anxiety. We get depressed. We wind up in the psych ward. We get on pills for the depression. Well, nobody's helping us to learn how to live. They say, well, meditate. But yes, all of those tools are wonderful. Meditate, work out. But how do we make it a cohesive, it has to be this cohesive way we live, and we don't know
It
how
has
to
to
do
be
it
a way of
well.
living. It can no longer be supplemental where you're like, okay, here's my life, here's my career, my family, and my workout if I have time.
Yeah.
The only time that I've ever gotten in shape, those times were like it was a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to somebody, I forget which, and I apologize to them, which conversation it was, but it was about really changing our mindset. Again, that it's not supplemental, it has to be a core of who we are.
It has to be, and we don't teach it. We need to learn it
Exact. That
as
was the other point. That was the other
you know,
point.
right? We take away recess, we take away, and that's just not good. And
Yeah.
so the good news is your Generation Z, your new generations are revolting against that. They don't want, I know a lot of people say, oh, they're lazy. That is not the case. They just don't want to work,
Themselves to
24/7 like
death.
we have. They
Yeah.
want both. They want to work, they want to contribute, but they're not willing to give up their whole life to that. Thank you. That's a good thing. And we need to figure out how to do that, how to do it well. And so there's two things with that, right? The first is we each need to take care of our part. We need to lead ourselves. We need to do the things we need to do to take care of ourselves. But the second thing is the workplace. As leaders, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to ensure that we care enough about our folks that we notice when they're not, they're not doing the things, at least minimally. So for instance, I'll give you an example. One of the things that happened when I was director was, there was a nurse, she was 65 and she was working with some of the little kids and she loved it. And she picked up overtime. We really needed help, but she was working 14 days straight. And I sat her down and I said, you can't do that. Pick two and I'm taking you off the schedule, even if we work short. And
Yeah.
she didn't quite, I said, look, this cannot be your whole life. I need you refreshed. I need you to sleep. I need you to eat right. I mean,
Yeah.
right? We need you to be healthy. And she did. We took her off the schedule and I told the staff they were just going to, if anybody else would volunteer. And I forget what happened. This was years ago, but that's the kind of leader I was. It wasn't okay to put work over the well-being because then she collapses at work. And
Yeah.
guess what? She's out for 2 months on medical leave because, she ran herself into the ground. We have to care. And it means that we have to just take a moment and slow down enough to look at our surroundings, look at our people. We don't need to know their personal lives. That's not what this is about. But
Yeah.
just enough of their personal, just that we know that they're doing what they need to do to take care of themselves. And if they need help, we have the EAP, your employee assistance programs
Yes.
or somewhere, or they can find a counselor or some sort of help to help them structure it. That's not our job, but we can give them the resources to do it. We need them to take care of themselves so that they can come to work and be great and create that environment and that space that supports that. And that's our responsibility.
Julie, I'm always curious for the authors that do come on the series. How did this book change you? In the course of this book coming out, obviously it's your life's work that you're putting into this, but was there anything that changed in you, any way that you viewed the material, the lessons, anything at all that changed or evolved from putting out this book?
Yeah. I mean, I think you learn so much from writing a book. I really have. I'm smiling as I say this. I know it has taught me both, all the books have taught me so much. Writing Leading at the Speed of People really reminded me that leadership ultimately is a reflection of self-awareness, which obviously is the focus of the journey called you. But, I was also reminded that, small changes can make a big difference. We don't have to change everything overnight. It's small little things. What, as I shared earlier, some of my clients, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, they can be brilliant leaders, but if they struggle with reactivity, they have to learn how to um, lead themselves before reacting. And so I think I learned a lot more about the power of self-leadership. I learned a lot about, just writing about the care leadership model. One of the things that I didn't share was that in the care, C stands for communication. And in there, I don't know what it was, but, I had acronyms coming to me. But when you think about what does communication as a leader mean, communication is such a big word and topic. And I go through a lot of that in the course. But in care, and for the C in care, verb, I use verb. So V is for values and vision. You have to know that. You have to communicate that. E is expectations. One of the major reasons people are dissatisfied at work and leave is they're not clear. Role clarity, right? It's one of the biggest topics studied. People need to know what's expected of them. So that needs to be clear. And then R and B is requests. So delegating, being able to ask people for things, saying what you say yes to. And if that's what you say yes to, then your boundaries are what you say no to. These all need to be communicated effectively. And so that was reinforced as I wrote the book. And then the big thing of respect and empathy. Empathy is not optional. It is not something extra that we add when we have time. It is not a soft skill. It is a core leadership strategy because we are not leading robots. We are leading people. And people are messy. We're messy. We have emotions. We have trauma. We have illness. We have financial issues. We have all kinds of stuff going on. And it's really nice to say, well, you leave all that at the door. No, we are human beings. We bring all of us into work. And we want you to focus at work. And we need leaders that can understand, be trauma informed, and understand that people have all sorts of stuff. It doesn't mean you don't need people to perform. They just need you to understand that they may be dealing with something else. And so I don't know.
Yeah, none of that. And the thing is, the main point I want to bring up kind of in tandem to that is that none of that is to excuse any poor behavior or throw accountability out the window. It's just merely, acknowledgement, respect, courtesy, consideration. So it's not to say give everybody a free pass. They can do whatever they want. It is that nice balance of accountability with respect at its highest level.
Exactly. You're holding space for them to be great.
Yeah.
So if they behave in a way that is bad, then the first question might be, are you okay?
Yeah.
What's going on with you? And then it's the feedback. Then you're going to say, well, yesterday I saw this behavior and this is the impact. Do you know what I'm talking about? Are you do you help them to understand the impact that their behavior had? And a lot of times people are not as aware as you think they are. So as soon as you say, well, they should know better. Yeah, they should, but their behavior is telling you that they don't. And it's such a different experience for that employee who just behaved badly. They already feel bad if they know it. And if they don't know it, then you're telling them, you're showing them they need help now from you to save face, to reconnect with their peers or whatever they did to fix the problem, and then to discipline to make sure it doesn't happen again, but not discipline first, right? It's not just discipline. You have to go through the steps to help them, bring them with you. You see it, but they may not see it. And so there's a place for discipline. Absolutely. All of those things. And I talk about that in the book too. The accountability is huge, but it's how we do it. And these are skills that I think a lot of leaders just don't learn.
Yeah.
They don't learn them.
Julie, for you, you mentioned a couple books. You mentioned, obviously, aside from your books, you mentioned a book by Tony Schwartz. You mentioned a book by, I think, Jeffrey Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
But for this particular question, is there a book that stands out for you as the most impactful book for you, or a few books that stand out? That's always your go-to if somebody maybe asks this question, the one that really stands out for you out of all the books that you've read. What stands out the most?
Yeah, the one book, if I had to pick one,
yes,
is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Can you say more?
It's a small book, and I know he has a fifth agreement too, and that's fine. But the four agreements I go back to. In fact, I have them on my wall. You can't see them, but they're posted here because I refer to them all the time. And for the audience members that don't know, the four agreements are: be your best. What is it? Oh, do your best. Assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personally. And of course, the first one is be impeccable with your word.
Yes. I
And
have
there you go.
there's
Yeah,
the first one, and I did read the fifth one because I think my first guest on the series, we covered this book. And then I brought her back for the 100th episode where we covered the fifth one. So yeah, please go ahead.
No, they come back time and again. And I think I reference them probably in all my books because inevitably, we make assumptions. In fact, if that is a thing, there's a book, I haven't finished reading it, but it's called The Neuroscience of You by Dr. Chantel Pratt. And that's her work is on assumptions and how the brain works to connect dots for us. We make assumptions all the time. It's how we can't possibly experience reality the way it is. It would be too much information. But that means that how we connect the dots could be wrong. And so there are many books out there like Think Again by Adam Grant, that tell us there's a couple like that book.
Yeah.
Make sure you're double checking because you are going to make assumptions and they could be false. So check in. As you can tell, I'm an avid reader, so I read a lot. But I would say the four agreements is the one I come back to time and again because inevitably, even as a nurse, whenever there was a problem or a mistake was made, an error, it was always back to basics. There was always a problem with the basic nursing procedure was missed. You miss a step and you're going to make an error.
Yeah.
And so that's where I feel like we go back to basics and we, how do I be impeccable with my word? How do I be my best? How do I, not make assumptions or not take it personally? I do a lot of speaking on that because we take everything personally. And that's how we learn. But that's also part of self-leadership. Because if we're taking it personally, we're going to get angry and upset.
Yes. And we're going to deal out of emotion.
Right. To enter the conversation. Guess what? We've just made that their behavior about us and our reaction rather than using our emotion as a message that says, oh, something's not right here. Let me ask this person. Let me ask him, what is going on for you? Again, leaning in, caring, taking a moment, and then uncovering what's going on for them and helping them. Then we can say, well, that really upset me that you said that or whatever, right? And so, but it's not about us. We lead the conversation with empathy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I always recommend that book. It's a simple book. It's a short book. And it's just what kills me about it is the simplicity.
Yes.
The simplicity of it. The one that stands out to me is always do your best, which sounds like a cliched piece of advice. But the way that he walks you through each, it's like he's sitting right next to you and he's jumping into your mind and blocking you from your own assumptions and say, okay, instead of looking at it this way, consider this. So I love the way he talks the reader through it. But the always do your best, that fourth agreement is just, again, it sounds like common sense, but the gist of it is, if you do your best, if you did everything you could, if you do your due diligence, the result, you can't tie yourself to that result. I mean, there's nothing more you could have done. So that for me was a good lesson in detachment. Yes. Doing my best, but if I don't get what I wanted, what more could I have done? I put in the best that I could. So anybody that wants like a quick read that is very deep, very simple, I highly recommend that book again.
Yeah. And very powerful. It's just very powerful.
Very powerful.
So I speak about all the assumptions and not taking things personally a lot.
Yeah. And even when you read those and you shouldn't, it's amazing how you go through your day and you still catch yourself doing it, taking it personally, jumping to conclusions or making assumptions.
Well, and it's kind of like the gentleman that you said came to you and said, I just want everybody else to change. Right? Yeah. Because he's making it personal. They're not doing what I want them to do. It's not about you. It's about what is best for the organization. They don't either understand why, what's important about this, what's the reason. So we have to take ourselves out of the equation. But the only way to do that is to understand who we are and getting our needs met outside of work. And doing that self-work is essential to be able to lead effectively, lead others.
Julie, in wrapping up, is there anything that I might not have asked? Anything you want to share? Anything you're up to these days? Please, whatever you want to share, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think we talked about a lot. I recently launched this self-paced, comprehensive leadership course that I'm really excited about to help leaders build their confidence and improve communication and reduce their stress and lead more with greater clarity and care. Alongside the course, of course, I coach individuals and groups, and of course, I'm developing more resources to support people who want to lead with more confidence and less stress. And to that end, I launched a new YouTube channel. Just bear with me as I try to get the videos to look good. The content's great, but I just got on Instagram. I have a new Instagram channel and LinkedIn and Facebook. I've published 3 books, which are available anywhere books are sold. I have a couple more books in the works. So I ride a motorcycle. And so one of the next books I write will be on the freedom from and the freedom to that happens when you're on a motorcycle or doing any kind of. I have a gentleman that I work with, and he has a boat that he takes and sails. So anything like that you would do. For me, it's a motorcycle. And so, so I'm just trying to stay busy and get a lot done and help people in whatever way I can. So if there's something that a reader or that a listener is looking for, then just reach out to me. You go to my website, drjuliedonley.com, or you can check out the course at leadingatthespeedofpeople.com. And reach out to me. Let me know how I can support you, what challenge you're having. And I'm sure that I can support you with that.
And again, Julie shared her book, Leading at the Speed of People, Strategies for Success in a Fast-Paced World. Julie, thank you so much for sitting down for this conversation.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. Really an honor.
No, I appreciate it. And if there's anything I might have missed, I drag my guests down tangents and rabbit holes, please let me know and I'll reach out to Julie. Or as she said, you can reach out to her directly about anything you might be curious about or any kind of wisdom, knowledge, guidance, anything that she might want to share back with you. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.